Well, David, welcome to the programme. Thank you very much for joining us today. How did you first discover that a slave trade was going on in your home city of San Francisco?
You know, this is one of those issues. 27 million people in slavery. You'd think I would know something about it, being a journalist and had a long career in social justice working overseas, but it had to stumble onto me. I was going to my favorite restaurant every couple of weeks. It was an Indian restaurant that served some great dal and papadums, and it wasn't until I picked up my newspaper one day and saw that all those young people, 15, 16-year-old, who were waiting on my tables, washing the dishes, that they had actually been brought into the United States to be slaves, to work without compensation, forced to continue working with threats of violence. So out of one restaurant, 500 young people, boys and girls, and that began my curiosity and exposure to the issue.
So how did that happen? How did they find themselves in that situation of being in a foreign country working as slaves?
Well, in some cases, they were outright kidnapped, abducted, and told that if they were to try to escape, their family back home in India would be harmed. And in other cases, they were promised a job in the United States. Hey, there's a job in an office waiting for you, or kind of this Western dream of going to school and getting work. And these traffickers were quite clever. They use visa fraud. We have a guest worker program that allows for companies to bring in workers from overseas, and they presented this as they were highly skilled technical workers when really they were just poor kids from villages in India.
So do you believe that this is widespread to the extent where here in New Zealand there's a slave trade?
It reaches even in New Zealand. There's the police here say that there are a minimum of 500 young girls from Thailand in your commercial sex industry. Now, there hasn't been a lot of research. It hasn't been on your radar either. It's been very invisible. So I imagine that you would find that even in Auckland or Wellington or major cities that you have more trafficking here than you would imagine.
Why have you got so involved there? Because, as you say, it's popped up on lots of people's radar. But why have you got as involved as you have?
You know, it's a very strange thing. It's almost like a calling. I always felt like I had been prepared for this for my 25, 30-year professional life. I've been an economist, investment banker. I've been a professor of ethics at a university, and I've been a journalist, a writer. Really, slavery is an economic issue. It's a moral issue, and it's a policy public issue. So it was almost like I had felt tripolar in my life, or there's three personalities, and why am I doing this, God? I feel called to pursue each of these careers, and with the slave trade in the modern world, I almost felt like I was being prepared to do this. But also, I took seriously this biblical call to be present with the poor, to bring good news to the poor and to those who are captive. And for me, it just fell into place that I needed to do something. First, write a book, because I'm a writer. First to write a book, and then as I met people around the globe who were fighting this, I said, I think this is what I should be doing. So I started this international organization called Not For Sale. No one should be for sale with a price tag.
Well, I've read the book, and in many places it's unputdownable and it's heartbreaking. For a start, there are so many stories that you've obviously researched of real people who are going through this. And one of the stories that I read was about slaves in Uganda who were told, don't approach organisations like World Vision because they'll poison you and they'll put glass in the potatoes. I mean, how does that happen? How can they get away with saying that?
World Vision New Zealand has brought me out to New Zealand, and they're preparing a big campaign, an advocacy campaign, and I'm really glad for that because their work in Uganda is really terrific. But you're right, traffickers look at what are the threats to their business, and very effective NGOs who are working in freeing children, rescuing children, are a threat to them. So they spread these rumors. A lot of these trafficked people who are in modern slavery are children. 50% of the 27 million people in the world are children. And so they get away with it.
Coercion and deception is something that the perpetrators of injustice use, you say in the book. That's their stock in trade.
It really is. It was almost like, I had this flash of Psalm 10 where there's a scripture that says that there's vultures that wait on the side of the road to take advantage of the widow and the orphan. And that's what we have in this modern world, is that wherever there's a lack of justice, an absence of justice, then coercion, corruption, deception will be used against the poor. And so what we need in the world is more justice. We need more legal justice, that there's a legal system that really caters to the poor, and economic justice, so they're not so economically vulnerable. But that's what we're about, of course, aren't we? We're about giving justice to those who have no justice, to give protection and defend those who have no defense.
One of the things, though, that is very shocking is how much of it is going on in the West, where
Yes.
justice is, we're in a Western society which stands on justice, and yet there's one sentence in the book about a man who liberates slaves from the homes of wealthy families in Virginia, Maryland, and New Jersey. Well, Virginia, Maryland, and New Jersey, they're not in the third world, are they?
No, they really aren't. And that was really probably the most surprising thing, is I might be able to say, well, it happens over there somewhere. But when I began to look in my own cities in America, and just came back from Australia, and there in Australia, and I'm sure here in ways that would go beyond the imagination of most people from New Zealand, that I found that slavery was in my own backyard. So what I did is I went to universities and to churches, and I said, look, help us make invisible the visible. So how do we take things that are unknown? And so we've been mapping slavery in our own cities and bringing it to light so that police officers, the legal system, would have to confront it in a way that they just don't want to see it. But, really, at the end of the day, it's wherever corruption's allowed to exist that we will see people being taken advantage of.
That's the sad thing, though, isn't it? Is that why is it that there are always people around who will take advantage?
It is, and it just goes back to me. It goes back to the sense of honor and integrity in your vocation. What we need today, and we need lawyers who practice real justice. We need healthcare professionals who want to heal. We need academics who want to bring the best of our intellectual ability to solve human problems. It's not just the minister in the church or someone who works for a nonprofit. We need everyone to see that their vocation is to give a gift to those who are in need. To me, it starts with, many people, maybe they sponsor a child in poverty, which creates sustainable communities, say with World Vision. But also it moves from to rescue children, and then from rescuing children to making poverty history. There's things that we can do around that. And I really think that the Christian church should be a leader in this. We should be agents of redemption. I'd love to be able to tell someone I'm a Christian, whether I'm in New Zealand or in Australia or America, I'm a Christian. Say, oh, you're those people who do all that redemption work. You're freeing people who are captives. You're good news to the poor. You're bringing peace where there's war. That's what I want to be known for. And so my little bit in Not for Sale is to provide rescue for children, to actually be known as an agent of redemption. And that's the kind of world that needs Christians right now.
David, thank you very much for joining us.
Real pleasure to be here.